Today, I'm so excited to bring on an awesome financial therapist, Steven Hughes, who also specializes in money Reiki, which is so exciting to me. Today, we're going to have a great conversation about financial therapy and the reasons why financially we're being held back. So we're going to dig deep into the reasons why we struggle with our finances and mostly the reasons why we're not able to successfully stick to a budget. Now, me and Steve, at one time, we're both in the same situation where, we've both been teaching budgeting for years. We've both been teaching people how to get out of debt for years. And we both got sick and tired of seeing people get in and out of debt over and over again. So we both decided that we wanted to start and make a change and kind of go into financial behaviors and reasons why people aren't able to financially make a change for the future. So I really think you're going to super enjoy this episode. It's going to be amazing. Steven, I found him actually on Instagram and I loved his work so much that I was like, you got to come on the show. So let's go hop into the interview with Steven. Thanks, Steven, for being on the show today and coming on to talk about Hard Money Talks. I'm so excited to have you on. What did I find you on Instagram? I think I did. I've been doing a lot of research on bringing on the top financial therapists. And what really stood out to me when I found out that you do money Reiki, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I absolutely love that because I do Reiki with my therapist. So welcome to the Hard Money Talk show. I'm glad that you're here.
Yes, I'm glad that I'm here too. Thanks for having me. And I would love to learn more about how you use Reiki, especially as a money coach and you coaching people to helping them live their best lives. So yeah, maybe we can get into that too a little bit later.
Yeah, I would love to get into that. So one of the things that we like to talk about on the show are reasons why people are failing with their budgets, right? I've been doing financial coaching and working as a financial entrepreneur online for 11 years now. And I've been teaching people how to budget. I've been teaching people how to get out of debt. And I get so sick and tired over the past 11 years. I've been so sick and tired of teaching people how to do this days in and out and in and out. And, giving them all the tools and all the things that I know that they need, but then seeing them do the same destructive habits over and over again and just not getting it. And I know why, because of my history as a drug and alcohol counselor and, all the counseling that I've done in the past, that there's so many things that trip us up when it comes to not only just money, but just life in general. Right. And so when I found you, I said, I got to have him on because there's so much, for lack of better term, shit that goes on when we're talking about money. And, I had Ed Combs on and he was talking about, I don't know if you're familiar with Ed Combs, but he is another money therapist. And he talks a lot about family trauma when you were a child. Yes. And we were talking about family trauma and money trauma when you were a child earlier. And, but I love your perspective of how you handle money trauma. So talk to us about how you came into being a money therapist. And then we're going to dig deep into reasons why people suck at budgeting and how you can help, how we can help them as therapists and things like that.
No, I love it. And so I'll mention I was in the same position as you. I was helping people get their budgets together, get rid of their debt, start managing their credit responsibly, stacking money towards their investment goals, all of these fun things. But then I realized that there were people who I'd worked with who would just kept coming back and for similar reasons. And I didn't like that. And so, after making every money misstep possible, as a young college student, a young adult, I'm talking 7 maxed out credit cards, overdraft fees to the point they closed all of my bank accounts, repossessions, plural, an eviction. My credit score is at 385 at one point. I really decided that I need to do some things different. And, just like you, we didn't grow up talking about money. And so as I started to change my financial life around, I really focused on financial literacy and decided, okay, well, this is what people need. I need to help people get these terms and words and understand how all of these money verbiage, how all of the jargon works. And so after 8 years of doing financial literacy with my nonprofit, No Money, spelled KNOW, it just started to get in the same position like we're talking about now. And I really wanted to focus on why people were behaving the way they were with their money. And so a few years ago, this is about to be 2022. So 4 years ago, I really leaned into financial psychology and behavioral finance. And when I'm talking about financial psychology and behavioral finance for people who are outside of the money world, I'm just talking about how we think about money and how we behave with it. And so as I learned more about just those things and what you mentioned that Ed talks about financial trauma, a lot of people don't recognize that the things that we do with our money have been ingrained in us since we were younger, with the things that we either observed about money, the things that we heard about money from the people around us, or the things we experienced. And so that's really how I jumped into financial therapy. Last year, or in 2020, I still was working full-time corporate, and I wanted to just lean in to the financial therapy because I saw the impact that it was making with the people that, as I changed my lens from financial literacy, I saw the impact that people were having. Like there was a 40 plus year old man who I worked with who had never been able to save money or to not live paycheck to paycheck. And by the time that, we finished our work, he paid off all of his debt. He had saved almost a year's worth of his income. And, just being able to think about things differently and deal with the root of your money challenges is what I'm all about. And so that's how I got into the work. And we can unpack all types of things that got me to this point along the way.
It's interesting because I look back on the interview that I did with Ed, and he was kind of doing some financial therapy with me. And one of the things that we were talking about was, when I grew up, one of the things that my book is called The Recovering Spender, right? So I had a spending problem, and it's not called recovered because I can still, go back into that mentality if I'm not in the right frame of mind. And so, when I was growing up, my mom, there was a lot that, my brother was a drug addict. And so there was a lot of chaos in the family. And so every once in a while, like maybe once or twice a year, she would let us skip school and take a mental health day, and we would go shopping. And this was the only time that I got alone with my mom. It was a special time. She would take us all out. She would take me out personally, and that would be the best kind of thing, experience. And so I grew up thinking shopping was self-care. Shopping was a way that I took care of myself. It was a way to make myself feel better. And, those kind of things, if you don't unpack them in a therapy, way through money therapy, you could go on for your whole life, never being able to get ahead financially and thinking, and this is where I see that it's so damaging, is there's so many personal finance experts that are just do this, right? You need to do this, step 1, step 2, step 3, and then you can't do the steps. And then now you're shaming yourself. I suck at money. I'm terrible. I'm never going to do good enough. And then you just give up. And now you're that much further behind. Do you see that in your work as well?
What you talked about is just having our money beliefs, and how our money beliefs are created are those things that happen to us at a young age. And so I think one thing that I try to get a clear foundation on with my clients is that money management is a skill. And the same way that everyone uses electricity, they flip on switches, they plug things in, but we do not expect anyone to be master electricians or be able to fix their situation out the gate just because they use electricity every day. It's the same thing with how we use money. We may use money every day, but if we don't take the time and actually learn how we're supposed to manage it and use it to move towards our money goals, or even our goals in general, then we're just going to continuously be not so good about managing money. And so there are a lot of people who feel shame around managing money when they were never taught how to manage money. But I think society does an awesome job on telling us the things that we're bad at, and they consistently let us know that we're terrible at managing money, so we should just buy the things that they market to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I definitely run into that often. And the other thing that I let my clients know is that money is energy. And if you, as far as like thinking about things differently, if you have heard the term money is the root of all evil, or the love of money is the root of all evil, which I think is foolishness, but we can get into that later too. And you replace then you have like internalized that money is bad and you want to get away from it. And whether you admit that or not, that's what happens as we play back those things in our minds, as we hear those different things and we have reactions to them. But if you just define money as energy, which I really think it is, and if you replace that word money with the word energy in that myth, then no one's going to walk around and say like, oh, energy is the root of all evil, or the love of energy is the root of all evil. It helps change the way that you think about it. So money management, like I hate that people do get shamed, but it's a real thing because of how we grew up talking about money or not. But there are some things that we can do along the way. Like now that we know that this whole thing has been made up, we can do things to change the way that we think about money, and then also the way that we think about ourselves when it comes to money.
Oh, I love that. I love what you just said about money being energy, because that definitely shifts the conversation, right? And I always tell people that money isn't just about money. I mean, money, like you said, it's energy. It passes from thing to thing to thing to thing, right? It's not really money. It's just not. It touches everything in your life. So if you can see it as energy and it just passes through. So unpack that a little bit more. Like when you're trying to explain that, because so I'm definitely like I thoroughly enjoy meditation. I enjoy I've done Reiki with my therapist, which is an energy healing, so explain that to somebody who has absolutely no idea what you're talking about. Like, what the hell does it mean when you say like energy is money? Because to me, it makes sense. But to somebody else who doesn't live in that world of a holistic kind of therapy setting, what does that look like?
Back in the days, I'm talking about thousands of years ago, we didn't have these paper dollars or any other currency that you may be listening to this podcast from, as far as like the country that you're in. And so because we didn't have that currency, we found ways to trade goods and services with each other, right? When you think about the word currency, it's current. It's literally energy, which passes through like wires and things like that to even power a house. And so when we're thinking about how we have, confirmed that, hey, I would like to trade this chicken for 2 of your goats. I mean, that'd be a terrible trade, but whatever. But as far as like thinking about value, right? That's really how money became. And think about all of the energy that you had to put in to raise maybe livestock that you could even trade with someone to get the things that you needed to get to live and to thrive. And so that's one way that I think about money, is that this really was created by us just because because the things changed. We weren't focused so much on agricultural trading and these different systems of how we were going to exchange value. But in regards of like money being energy on the therapeutic sense, or even as we're talking about Reiki, and we haven't gotten to it yet, but all of this energy is being passed, like you mentioned, through one another. It's supposed to flow. And so when we talk about money, there are some people who've experienced some wild things in the past and in their lives. And so they hold on to money. They kind of start hoarding it, right? Or they push it all to the side and they don't know what to do with it because they're nervous, they're scared. Well, that stops the energy flow right there. If you hold your hands closed, then nothing can get out, but also nothing can get in. As we talk about money and energy, we talk about the system and trading, all the things that we've put our energy into to be valuable for someone else,
Mhm.
and for someone else to exchange that value with us. And we're using money right now in the sense, but it's the same thing in any other relationship with anything. Like if I care about you, I'm going to exchange like my care for you, and you're going to maybe care about me, and it'll be reciprocal. And if you don't, there are other people in my life who will reciprocate that. But I want to make sure that we are clear with just the way that we're talking about energy, because I think sometimes, especially now, like the word, when people introduce the word energy in a conversation, some people start to back away because they think like, oh, this is about to get super deep. I don't know
Right.
what's
Like,
going
oh,
on.
voodoo. Like, I'm
But
not.
yeah, it's, and really, like, I think that we're all participating in this in some way, shape, or form. So if we just get clear on very specific things, like money is energy because of the way that we use it and how it flows, I think that we will all be better off.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's just as simple as like, if you smile at somebody walking past you on the street, they'll smile back at you. Something as simple as that, like that's the kind of good energy that we're talking about. So let's start talking about some ways that you see people in your practice with you just mentioned hoarding money. So I'll just speak about some things that I've seen, and you can speak about some things that you've seen, maybe some patterns that you see over and over again, of things that keep people stuck in their financial journeys. Because some things that I see are the lack of being able to stick to a budget. That's because they can't tell themselves no. They just cannot, stick to it and tell themselves no. That's one thing. Hoarding money is a big thing that I've seen. Another thing that I've seen, especially people that have come here from other countries. I'll say, for example, my mom's husband moved here from Chile, and he didn't have shoes growing up. So I'll just use him as an example. He didn't have shoes growing up, and so the first couple years he lived here, he bought like a new pair of shoes like every week, because like in his head he never had enough shoes, right? So those are some of the things that I can recognize. I deal primarily with like women, and financial abuse is a big thing that I cover. Domestic violence is a big thing. Financial infidelity is a big thing that we've covered on this show a lot as well, because domestic violence is a big thing, and women trying to escape domestic violence relationships. So I know that's kind of a laundry list of things, but can you relate to any of those and like add to any of those?
A lot of the things that you talked about are things that my clients experience as well, like not being able to stick to a budget, and being like very clearly impacted by how they grew up. So if they went without something, then they're going to cash out on that thing as they get older.
Right. They're going to just
And
buy as many as they can.
as many as they can. And like other things that I see, that I experience as well, is just clear avoidance of money. Like the bills come in, there's a bill, you throw it away, or the 800 numbers are calling, and there are late payments that are stacking up, but you don't answer the phone. And those things are generally because we don't know what to do. Like we want to just avoid it at all costs, because either we have no idea what's the next action to take, or this is what we saw growing up. Like we saw our parents throw away the bills, or not answer the phone calls, or tell the person who left a red letter disconnection notice on the house that, hey, we sent a payment last week, or whatever it is. But the other thing is that they create a scarcity mindset, or they are formed. I shouldn't say they create, but they are results of a scarcity mindset. And that's what I see with a lot of my clients. I know you said you work with a lot of women. My clients are about 50-50. And most of my clients are Black entrepreneurs and millennials. And so these are people who are high ambitious, maybe high paying as well, but they have like a barrier between them and how they want to manage their money, or between how they're managing their money now and what their true core says on what they want to do with their money. Because no one wants to be bad with money, as we say, like, and I say bad as far as like managing money in ways that they don't want to. Like people want to be able to think about the future and not have to worry about working to live. And that's the thing that I work with my clients often, is just helping them recreate their mindset and really rewire what they've been taught or what they've experienced to this point. Like if we don't ever talk about it, then we're just going to keep moving. It's
Right.
like there's so many things that reinforce the normal, which is, hey, we're living paycheck to paycheck. We can't really, make the money that we want to make. We cash out on like holidays and birthdays and things like that. But really, to take a step back and to peel things back, oftentimes people don't talk about like how they even got this mindset around money, that oh, I hate money, or money's not a big deal to me. And for one, I was talking to a client, and she was telling me, uh, oh, money's not a big deal, like I don't worry about money. She's a doctor. And I was like, okay, well, how do you feel about managing your money? And she said, well, I don't really do well with that. I'm still trying to figure it out. And I said, well, you just said it wasn't a big deal, so do you want to figure it out? And she'd mentioned, like, as we continued the conversation, that the reason why she didn't want to really get close to money and really figure it out was because when she was growing up, her dad weaponized money. So if you were doing the things that he wanted you to do in the household, like, everything was cool. You got the things you wanted, everything was taken care of. But if you were kind of stepping out of bounds on what he wanted to see, well, there were things that you weren't going to get. And money would be cut off in certain situations. Like, you wouldn't be able to play this sport or whatever it is if he didn't like the way that you were behaving. And I think I think a lot of us can relate to that in regards of like things that are just taken away. But it wasn't just desires, it was also like needs. And so if you are growing up and you have some of your needs taken away, not just the things you want, but things that you need food, you need water. And some of those things are taken away because someone doesn't like the way that you're behaving. Then this is probably going to create a traumatic experience for you.
So how would that come out in adulthood, do you think? Like, how would you see that come out in adult relationships or behavior?
It could come out in a bunch of different ways that I've seen it play out in a lot of adults' lives is that they spend money impulsively. So with no regard of like, oh, am I going to save up or invest in this specific thing? It's like, oh, you know what? I worked really hard. I deserve this. I deserve whatever this is, whether you wanted that thing or not. Like, going out on the weekends, like I talked to some friends. I don't drink alcohol anymore. Like, I think I drank enough for all of my life when I was in college. But I talk to some friends now, and they'll tell me like, I hate drinking. And you'll see them like throwing back shots on the weekend. It's like, I don't understand what's going on. It's the same thing that happens with our money. Like, we'll say like, you know what? I don't want to spend money on dining out anymore. Like, I have food at home. I'll just cook. But say we have a bad day or we have a great promotion at work, then that quickly turns to, you know what? I'm gonna treat myself. Or, you know what? This day has been crazy. I deserve. And so those are things that happen like for people who may have avoided or had traumatic experiences from a parent with their money as they grew up. But then we also see it play out in ways of like making your self-worth dependent on your net worth. And I don't use the term net worth when I'm talking to my clients. I always say financial net worth because I don't want people to get caught up in saying that however much money they have is really descriptive of the type of person they are. Because
Right.
it's not. We know rich people who are terrible, and we know rich people who are doing great things. And so I think that those are the things that I've seen like play out with consistent clients, and how I've seen, even as you have those experiences as a kid, how they could play out, as an adult, whether it's how you spend money or even how you talk about money with your friends, family, and your kids. There's so many things that goes into, but if we never take a pause to say, hey, how did I even get here? Why do I
Mm-hmm.
even think like this? Why do I even behave like this?
Yep.
Then usually that doesn't happen. And for me, it didn't really happen until I stopped living paycheck to paycheck.
Mm.
Like, until I didn't have to worry about whether the bills were going to be paid next month, I don't think that I had the opportunity to really take a step back and say like, what is it? And this is after I was in financial education, after I've been a speaker for years, all these different things. What is it that is making me decide to have this behavior? Like,
Right.
why am I, spending this money when I know that I really want to focus on real estate investing? Or what is it that I'm, eating all of this money? Because I'm a foodie. I love food.
So do I. That's where I
You
always
know,
spend all my money. I'm like, I
yeah.
gotta stop eating out.
And so one thing that one thing that I mentioned to people is that there are ways to manage our money that doesn't have to include guilt. And like, I can break that down for you as far as like how I manage my money, where I don't even think about the money I'm spending on food because it's there.
It's like, you know what? I want to get my nails done. I want to go and get a massage, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it because I have the money. And so you got to budget in the things that make you happy.
Exactly. Yes. I remember like years ago, Ramit Sethi wrote a book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
Yep. I read that. Yeah.
And he had talked about really focusing on the things that bring you pleasure and mercilessly cutting the things that you do not care about.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just early on in my financial life, as I kind of did a 180, that I realized I didn't care about cars. Like, my dream car was a 2005 Honda Accord, and I bought it in like 2018.
Yeah.
And so I think that, but it also affords me the ability in my Play-Doh account, as I call it, to just whenever I want to eat some food, or, me and my lady go out to dinner, then I don't feel bad about spending the money. And if it's not in the Play-Doh account, well, guess what? We brown bag lunching it.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to worry about dining out until the account is replenished. And so just little things like that will help you, give yourself grace and not feel shameful when you're spending the money. Like your mom's husband, hey, hell, he could buy shoes every week out of his Play-Doh account if he wants, and then not have to think about like, damn, am I really managing my money the way I want?
If you started 2022 with more debt than you'd like to have, you're not alone. Debt.com is here to help. Whether you still have holiday credit card debt to pay off, or student loan payments are starting to build up again. Maybe you even have debt collectors that are hounding you for payments you just can't make. The experts at Debt.com can help. Finally, one website can help you solve your debt problems. Credit cards, back taxes, student loans, medical debt, collections, you name it, Debt.com can help you solve it. And they do it with no judgments, because they understand that when people end up in debt, it's usually for things outside their control, like job loss or divorce or some other hardship. So if you're in debt, visit laurengrutman.com/debt to get the relief you need, or call 888-431-2044 to get a free consultation with a debt relief specialist. Find solutions to get out of debt, fix your credit, and get on the path to achieving your financial goals. When life happens, visit Debt.com. I love that. And I always think that you need to give yourself that money. Like, I spend a lot of money on self-care because that's important to me. But you know what? Like, I cook most of my meals at home, even though I love eating out. Like, it's just not in the budget right now. Like, I'd rather cook at home. And me and my kids, we don't go on like elaborate vacations. I have a camper, so we camp a lot. You know what I mean? Like, that's just what we do. That's our preference. So, and I don't have a huge house. I have a smaller house, like, cause I like a smaller house and I could afford more, but I'd rather not. So I love that, because I think if once you give yourself the permission to live the life the way that you want to live your life, and like not care about other people's opinions about the way you live your life, like, you're going to be cool, right? Like, I can live my life. I can have a small house. I can cook my meals at home, but you know what? I'm going to go get a massage every month, and I'm going to get my hair and my nails done. And my kids are going to have clothes. I buy a lot of my clothes at the thrift store because I just don't care. Like, I rent all my TV clothing. I don't have a clothing budget because I just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I, we are the same. Like, I
just don't care.
I think if my partner didn't buy as much clothes for me as she does, then I don't know if right now I'm wearing a crew neck, and I would have worn this to a speaking engagement that, is happening. But I definitely feel you.
Yeah. I just don't care about those things. Like, I use Rent the Runway for all of my television clothing and speaking clothing. And that's just not just don't care, so we give ourselves the permission, right, to spend our money the way that we want to and not feel shame about it. and be okay with
For
it.
sure.
As long as you can afford it. Obviously, we're not putting it on credit cards and all that kind of stuff. So
one thing that I'll mention really quick is that you mentioned like the things that you do for self-care. In some circles, I have no idea why, but self-care is getting a bad rap because the money that people spend on self-care. And just for people who have a hurdle on saying like, oh, I'm going to get a massage, like it's self-care, think about it as well-being, like the same way that you should go to the doctor and do these different things. Um, Taking care of your feet, like with a pedicure, or your hands with a manicure, is not a bad thing. Like as long as you're putting money to the side to make it happen. Getting a massage where your stress is getting reduced will also help you make better money decisions that align with the things you want to see. And so it's not so much of, some people feel like self-care is just spending a bunch of money on shit that they don't need. But it's, even if you have that hurdle, like think about it as your well-being money, that you are going to be well every single month. And so I love that you do those things for yourself.
Oh, I love that. I'm switching it now. I'm writing that down. It's now my well-being money, because I love that mindset shift of well-being, because it is like, I'm a single mom of 4 kids and I run my business full time, and like life is crazy. And to me, to take that time where I'm focusing on de-stressing myself and giving myself time to like get my head in the right place. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent of therapy. Like I'm still I don't think I'll ever stop therapy, because to me, it's something I look forward to. I go every other week, and it's something I look forward to every single week, every time I go, to unpack. And I don't think that there's ever a moment where you can't grow and become a better person. And whether I need to do that with my finances, or unpack this or unpack that, and talk about my children or friendships, or childhood for me is something that I'm constantly unpacking. And one of the things, I want to switch to talk about the money Reiki, but one of the things that I do use Reiki for was that I have a diagnosis of PTSD. And I talked about I talk about this in a couple other episodes that I've done on the podcast, about how I found myself in a very short-term domestic violence relationship that gave me PTSD. And once I got out of that relationship, this was after my divorce of my kid's father. After I found myself out of that relationship, my spending, I feel like, kind of went crazy again, because I got this diagnosis of PTSD, and it was like a way for me to regulate my brain again, And so I started doing Reiki and EMDR therapy with my therapist, and that really helped regulate everything. But that's why I initially started doing Reiki. So what's the difference between regular Reiki? Well, a lot of people might not even know what Reiki is. So start with what Reiki is in the first place.
I actually was introduced, like my first Reiki session was with my therapist. We started working together in therapy because I was looking for a therapist a few years ago, knowing that, just like you said, the impact that talking to someone would have on my professional life, but in every other area. And it wasn't until last year. My father was in a coma at the time, and he's since transitioned, but God bless his soul. And when I was trying to like work through that, talk therapy is excellent, but there are some things that you may need something different. And so,
because they're hidden, they're like stuck inside.
exactly.
And a lot of people don't realize that there's stuff that's stuck in there that you can't even get out there. It's so stuck in your brain.
Exactly. And because therapy, like talk therapy, is dependent on you being able to recall some of these things and bringing these things up. If they are so wedged into your psyche, or things that happen in your childhood, or even you mentioned PTSD, I think that a lot of us have a post-traumatic stress disorder. But as I had my first Reiki session with my therapist, who was also a Reiki master, I did not recall that. But my partner, she had a Reiki session right before a big event in her life, just a year or two prior. And she told me like, hey, maybe you want to try this out. And so after my first session, I knew that it was something that I wanted to do, like for myself. And I told her, I was like, yo, I feel amazing. I feel way lighter. and I'm going through things that I've never experienced before, like having a parent that is in this position. And it was in the height of the pandemic, so we couldn't see my father at the hospital. So all of these different things were happening. But after my first Reiki session, I told her, like, hey, I would like to learn how to do this for myself and for other people. And I became a Reiki practitioner later that year. And this year I became a Reiki master teacher, so I could, help people even get to this practice even faster, or not faster, but opening the practice to more people. Because I think that as more people are exposed to Reiki, they're like, oh, I didn't even know this was possible. So let's break this thing down. Reiki is a healing practice that's been around for thousands of years. It was preserved in Japan, but it didn't start there. And so a lot of the people that you may come into contact with today, they're probably certified through this Japanese technique, right? But just to be really clear, Reiki, and I'll spell it for y'all, Reiki, is a combination of two words. Rei means sacred, and Ki means energy. And so as you're working with a Reiki practitioner or master, Reiki is really used to help you get your energy back on track, help you get rebalanced and recharged with your energy. And we talked about energy a little bit before when it comes to money, but even as we're talking about energy, you know how you walk into a room after two people were just arguing and you can feel that tension? Or like meeting a new person and just becoming fast friends because y'all's energy just really hits it off.
Or
Like you
you can feel somebody's energy and be like, I need to get away from this person. They
exactly
crazy.
exactly. And so like thinking about how that feels, we all have these experiences with our energy, but we don't identify it like that. We just feel like, well, we got a vibe or there's something up, and so Reiki is like one of the first things that I found that was so intentional about getting your energy back on track. And along with other practices like meditation, and I would love to hear more about EMDR. With Reiki, I've mashed it with my financial background, because one thing that I've learned in this healing practice is that every single practitioner and master teacher that you work with, we all have different gifts. And so I say that the science of Reiki is all the same. Any Reiki practitioner that you go to, they're going to help you rebalance your energy, usually through, if it's an in-person session, usually through, some hand motions in specific areas of your body, which are where your energy travels. And so if it's virtual, then they will do all of this just like Zoom, like we're talking about now. But each practitioner has a gift that they already was given. And so I marry my decade in financial education, coaching, and therapy with my Reiki practice to help people move some of the financial blockages they may have in their energetic life. And as we talked about before, everything's connected. And so as you're removing some of these financial blockages, like a lot of my clients have told me that they are embarking on new things, like they got the promotion, or they were featured in the Washington Post for a writing assignment they really wanted to do, or their business has taken off, or they've made huge connections with people who they never thought they'd work with. And I think a lot of that is just being conscious of where we are energetically. Like, hey, how do I feel about this? And you mentioned post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. A lot of us are walking around with financial PTSD, and we don't address it. And because it goes unaddressed, then we may get into a therapy session thinking that, oh, well, this therapist is going to be able to help me like unpack these things and finally move on. And then we see a financial coach who may not be experienced with like how people really make money decisions, and they tell you like, oh, we just need to budget better and set new financial goals,
which is
and
like shaming and makes it worse.
exactly.
Yep.
And so there are more things that get packed on top of this unsettled, never corrected energy that you just haven't ever dealt with. And so I think that that's the place to start. Like for people who may feel like, oh, I've never been able to stick to a budget, or, I get nervous every time I think about a big money decision, or there are just so many different ways that Reiki can help with that, because it really deals with, how we feel and how we think about money. So if you are unmotivated or you're frustrated when like new expenses arise, or if you're just anxious or feel shame or guilt around money, whether it's from the things that you've done in the past or from working with like a new coach or money professional now, maybe you need to just get your mind and your energy right. And so I think the money Reiki will continue to grow in like popularity for people who understand, like, I need to work on my well-being. And this, no matter how many books I read or how many podcasts I listen to or how many interviews I hear, I just can't make the financial actions that I need to hit my goals. And so money Reiki definitely helps kick off that process.
I love that. And I think, anytime if I try to start anything new, and I've hit like the 3 book mark where I've read like 3 books on it, and I've been listening to a ton of podcasts and I still haven't made the change. It's like, okay, there's something deeper going on here. Because like this obviously is not just like a skill I have to learn. There's some stuff in there. And that actually was one of the things that through working with my therapist, one of the things by doing the EMDR, which EMDR is like you kind of, it involves a lot of like tapping, right? And connecting thoughts to other thoughts to unpack and find out earlier thoughts and track back reasons why you have responses to things in the way that you do. So for example, I could say every time I set a budget, I have anxiety. And then through EMDR, let's say I would think back to a memory of that happened when I was a kid and I asked my mom for money to go to the movies and she started yelling. This is just like an example. She started yelling like, we don't have money in the budget. And then she sat me down for 2 hours and showed me all of their finances. And it was like, I was like 10, I was like, whoa, I didn't need to hear all that. You could have just told me no.
Straight up.
So like those kind of thoughts follow you your whole life. And so EMDR kind of follows that thought process, and it really helps unpack PTSD because you see why, and then you do like you talk to your inner child of why forgive that part, and you do like a part therapy. I don't know if you're familiar with that. You take that part out and talk to it, and it's been really healing for me. But that honestly was a big change in starting this podcast for me. Was I'm not happy in the career that I'm in anymore. And I thought to myself, I've got to change the conversation because I don't want to just teach budgeting anymore. I'm sick of it. Like people aren't being successful. Yes, people are not being successful anymore, because I have the counseling background, and I've toyed around with like, okay, do I go get another degree? Do I go back to school? Blah, 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 but I have this very successful brand and voice out there already. So how do I change up the conversation so that we can all get to the deeper root of why this isn't working for a lot of people and take the shame off? You know what I mean? So I'm like, we need to do a money Reiki session together because that just sounds like, yeah, that sounds powerful.
I think that I may have gotten into an EMDR session without knowing. So there was a woman that I met last year. Her name is Christine Ruiz.
Okay.
And she offered an attraction point. Gosh, I wish I remembered the exact like wording of it. But we did a session and it was exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
We went back like, hey, what is the feeling that you feel most when you were at this age? And it's like frustration. It's like, oh, what was it that brought you this frustration? And it was being young in a household that was, financially insecure, and, lights or water being cut off, and me not being able to contribute at all, or me not being able to, or me not having McDonald's money, right? When you're growing up and people want to stop, after practice, like for football or soccer, and it's like, oh, we don't have McDonald's money. Like we need to go home and eat at home. And I think as if you don't deal with those instances as you grow up, you'll spend money on every single restaurant every single day, even though you have money, you have groceries at home, because you didn't have the opportunity to do that when you were younger. So 8-year-old Steven is now making the money decisions for 34-year-old Steven. And so I think that a lot of people could benefit off of EMDR or attraction point counseling, because it does give you the opportunity to, like, our minds are way more powerful. Like, I'm not going to get into like some matrix red pill blue pill stuff, but I think that when we think about how much life we've experienced over the years, by the time you're 18, you've had so many money experiences that you won't even think about the ones that started your equation. Because at the age of 3, we start putting this equation together in our mind of money and value. And so, like kids, they'll ask you to buy all types of things, whether they actually want it or not, because they're trying to figure out like, oh, this thing may bring me some value. They don't know how much it costs. But as you get older, like, you have adults in your life that will tell you different things about money, whether it's, oh, that costs too much, that's expensive, we don't have money to do that, like, you can't go to the movies, no fast food, whatever it is. And as we experience those experiences keep stacking up on top of each other. And if you never go back to say like, oh man, you know what? I'm still partly the person making the money decisions from that 8-year-old Steven who couldn't dine out ever. Like, he couldn't go out to eat unless like we got a big windfall. And being able to also like recall that, oh, things were cool when we had money in the household, but when we didn't, things might have gotten off the rails. And all of the things that happen around those experiences. I think for people who may be listening to the podcast or even want to have these conversations with their family members, using that EMDR technique, I think would be super impactful, because when you start seeing those things that you have experienced that you haven't thought about in 10, 20, 30 years, it's going to change the way that you see different things.
I love the way that you just said 8-year-old Steven is controlling 30-year-old Steven's financial decisions, because that's exactly what happens, when we make financial decisions like that, and I think I always think about this story that I share. I don't think I've shared it on the podcast yet, but I think so much about the conditioning of our brains from when we were such a little child. And so my house is like a really old, house. It was built in 1910, and we have really terrible water pressure in our house. And my kids have grown, like, this is the house they grew up in. When I got divorced, I kept the marital home. So this is the house that they've all grown up in. And one of the things in this house is you cannot flush the toilet when somebody's in the shower. So you can't.
When I was growing up, same. Water heater.
If you do, it gets really hot and the water pressure goes like way down, like there's like a trickle. And so when everybody knows when somebody's in the shower, you just don't flush the toilet. So wherever we are, we could be in a hotel, we could be at somebody else's house. My kids, wherever they go, they never flush the toilet when somebody's in the shower. And even if like we go to a hotel, I'm like, you guys can flush the toilet if somebody's in the shower. Like, no, but somebody's in the shower. You guys, it's only at our house. But the rest of their life, I know that they will not flush the toilet when somebody's in the shower. And that's just how deep this goes, right? And this can be with money. Like, my mom was a social worker, and she told me this story once. She worked with a lady that walked to the grocery store every single morning and got food for that day for her family every single morning. And so one day she said, why don't you go and get food for like 3 days at a time? And she's like, you can do that? People do that? You don't just have to go every day? And like, that was how conditioned her brain was, because every morning she woke up and she walked to the grocery store with her mom to buy the food for the day. And the conditioning of how we were raised around money is so deep, like how my kids will never flush the toilet when somebody's in a shower. Man. Because they're all convinced that that person will get burnt to death.
It took me a little while to start flushing, like, when someone else was in the shower. So I understand that totally.
Yeah, isn't that a funny thing? But it's going to take them some time to reframe their conditioning.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it takes time for us to reframe our money and how we spend our money. And it might be so deep that we need therapy. And I'm so grateful that I feel like Americans are getting more on the therapy bandwagon, that it's not so like shameful now that like, oh my gosh, you're in therapy. It's like, come on, get in therapy. Like, this is amazing, people. Like, let's heal. Let's become better people. We've all got stuff. Just let's work on it,
Let's work on it. I think in this generation, because I was raised by two Jamaican parents in the Bible Belt in South Carolina. And so you would have people who would generally tell you like, oh, if something's wrong, just go to church. Like, it'll be fine. Like, you pray it away, everything will be cool, until you realize that a lot of the people in church need therapy. And so I think that
I'm laughing because I was raised in a really religious home too.
Yeah. And I don't know if my home, I'll say that my home was more spiritual than religious, but like, my mother is a minister. My dad was a deacon type situation.
Okay.
And it's funny to hear how we've experienced these different things growing up, but we have, like, a lot of us are saying like, oh, you know what, you're wrong about that. Let me hit this therapy up. To your point about conditioning, I'll mention a quick story that I had a conversation I had with my mom. I want to say it was last summer, like as I was just doing the work. Everyone who, I think that all the therapists that I meet, they have therapists. And so even as I tell my clients, hey, these are some exercises you can do with your family, I do those same exercises too. And so as I was having a conversation with my mom, asking her like, hey, what did your parents teach you about money that you feel like every single child should know? And as we started having this conversation about the things that she learned as a kid, she let me know, because my sister, it's me and four of the siblings, 3 boys and a girl. My sister has been like treated like a princess, as she should. But one thing that I say to her is that I think that she has managed money amazingly since I've known her. And when I was talking to my mom about these things last summer, she mentioned to me that, in my house growing up, my mother had me manage all of the money, and the boys, they would bring home money. And so I figured that my dad was teaching them what they needed to do with money, and my mom was teaching me what I needed to do with my money. And so when y'all were growing up, I didn't teach y'all a lot about money, because I figured like, oh, it's something that y'all would learn from your dad. And she taught my sister, like, I guess all the things that she learned as a young girl about money. And so looking back on the conditioning, or part of the thing that happened from that conditioning, is that we didn't talk about money, and I didn't manage it well, and all these different financial experiences happened and missteps. But my sister, I don't think, had those type of missteps. She was a little more prepared. She thought about money differently. And that same conditioning, that even whether it's flushing the toilet, or, hey, when I was younger, the only people who talked about money were girls and women, because these are the people who manage the money in the household. That conditioning will trip you up major when you get older. And so even as we finished the conversation, she apologized. She was like, man, I wish I did more. And at this point, I'm an adult. Like, it's on me to do the things I need to do. But that was still very helpful to hear her apologize, like, for feeling like she didn't put us on the right track financially. And for a lot of people who may be going to therapy now, or who jump into financial therapy going down the road, or even test out money Reiki, the same thing is going to happen for their family. It may not be for them to say like, oh, I've made all these missteps, or I've had all of these experiences. Maybe it's for you to think about things differently, so that you're teaching your child, or you're teaching your niece and nephew, or kids in the community, like, this is how we should talk about money. This is how we should interact and behave with money. We shouldn't feel shameful or guilty about it. We should be able to talk about it openly, just like we talk about the weather.
Yeah.
And as we have that thing that turns around, I think that the condition, and we work on our own conditioning, we will see even more people jump into therapy for the most amazing reasons, not to just say like, oh, I got my therapy, but to really see the impact that we want to see in these money conversations and changing the conversation from budgets to better.
And I think that's so beautiful. And I love, there's one thing that a really big nugget that you had in there that said, I'm an adult and it's on me now. Like we can't expect our parents to go back and do anything different, right? It is what it is, accept that what happened is what happened. And now it's on us to grow and change as grownups, right? And I know there's so much resentment and stuff that we can look back on in anger of what our parents did or didn't teach us or whatever. But the reality is we're grownups now, time to put our big girl, big boy pants on and and grow up and change for ourselves and for our families or future families. So
For sure.
oh my gosh, this conversation was just amazing. I could go on and on.
Yeah,
It's
I
so
was gonna say we could do
encouraging.
this for
We could do
hours,
this
but
for hours.
I do know this is has been a time.
I know. Oh my gosh. No. Okay. So what you need to do now is tell people like where they can find you, how they can get money Reiki, money therapy, all of that. So they can reach out to you.
People can find me on my website, stevenmhughes.com, and it's STEVEN M like money, HUGHES.com. Or they can find me on Instagram and Clubhouse. I'm most active on those platforms. We've a lot of money conversations on Clubhouse and even some Reiki group shares. So for people who may not be in the place where they can invest in a money Reiki session for themselves, jump to our Clubhouse room and you'll experience Reiki for at no cost but your time. And I've loved this conversation, Laura. I would be down to continue it on some other platform and see how we can keep things going. But I'm glad that you've taken this step like away from the budgets that the personal finance community talk about and helping people really dig into things that are going to make the difference. And all the things that I do is to specifically help people heal their relationship with money. So looking forward to connecting with more people on and off the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I've so enjoyed this as well. I think that this is where we need to be. We need to be talking about these hard money talks and need to be really digging in deep with the stuff that really is going to help heal us, deep down in the core. So I appreciate you so much. And I'll leave all the links in the show notes for everybody on where you can find Steven. So thank you so much. Woo! Okay. That was a great interview. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling so energized and excited about the future. I think Steven was a great guest, and I hope that you go check out all of his work. I know that myself, I'm going to be doing a money Reiki session with him myself. I want to see what it's all about. So definitely go and check out his website and just be encouraged that just because you might not be good with money right now doesn't mean you're going to suck with money always. There's always reasons why we're maybe not doing so hot with what our finances are. So definitely taking a deep look at the reasons and the psychological reasons and going to therapy and digging a little bit deeper as to why financially you're not able to get ahead can never be a bad thing. And so I hope that me and Steven encouraged you through our talk today about the reasons why you might be struggling with your money, maybe some family issues, or maybe some conditioning of your brain, or maybe you're stuck somewhere and you just don't know how to get out. So definitely go and check out Steven's information. I've left all of his information in the show notes of this podcast. You can go to laurengrutman.com/podcast for all of that information, and definitely go and book a money Reiki session with him. I know I am. I already got his link to his calendar right after we did the interview. So I went and booked a session right away. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.